Hi guys, it's Kirsty. Today I want to do a video about changing some of our behaviours in order to help us on our recovery journey, and so therefore changing our beliefs around being selfish and not needing other people's approval. But before I go into that, I'd like to ask, please do subscribe by clicking on the subscribe button below in order to stay up to date with new videos as they're released. So the reason I wanted to do this video is because in my own recovery journey, I needed to make time to work on my recovery, and that had been quite difficult because I had a bit of a habit of overcommitting myself to things. And this is something that I kind of look back on and see that the run up to when my OCD started to get quite severe and I was signed off work, I was frequently overcommitting myself to things in order to avoid conflict with people or in order to have their approval, to not annoy people. And so I was saying yes too much when actually I didn't want to do stuff. And then it took my OCD getting really bad and having to be signed off work to be my wake-up call, really, to realise that I needed to change some of these behaviours. But in order to change those behaviours, I needed to change the beliefs surrounding these behaviours. So why did I feel the need to constantly try to people please? And why was I so afraid of conflict or annoying people? And quite a lot of those fears actually related back to the fears that were fueling my OCD, particularly when it came to relationship OCD. So needing other people's approval, needing to feel connected with people, being afraid to lose people from my life, being afraid to fail or being afraid of rejection. So that was fueling a lot of those behaviours, that kind of overcommitting. So I want to talk about some of the things that I was doing that wasn't helpful to me prior to my OCD getting really, really bad. And I want to talk about how I've worked on changing them and changing the beliefs surrounding them and changing my views on certain things. So I want to talk about the word selfish. So we have negative kind of connotations around this word. It's almost like we're brought up to believe that we have to share and we have to be kind, and if we want to be kind, we can't be selfish. And it's quite a polarized view, really, because in order to look after ourselves as best we can, sometimes we need to make the choice to do what's best for us. And if you want to call that being selfish, perhaps, okay, so be it. Maybe that's selfish. In order to do so, maybe we need to change our beliefs to accept ourselves that, yes, I'm gonna be selfish. So to start challenging why being selfish is so bad. Animals, in order to survive, have to compete to eat. And in some ways, human beings, we have to look out for ourselves in order to survive. And if certain behaviours lead us to poor mental health, if we're overdoing it, we're overcommitting, we're doing too much for other people, not having time for ourselves, and we're making ourselves stressed and ill, then we're not really serving ourselves as best we can in order to survive. On the run up to becoming quite unwell with my OCD, I was struggling from anxiety already. I was working in quite a busy, stressful job, yet I knew that I was not necessarily feeling great in myself, yet I continuously worked late and I'd get in for early mornings. My anxiety was so high at the time that I was struggling in the morning to eat because I felt so anxious, and I quite frequently had a bad stomach in the morning. Yet I continued with this because to get the work done in order to not look bad. And really it's because I wanted the approval of people that I worked with, and I was afraid, what if I'm not good enough? I have to overcompensate by being seen to work really hard and being a great team member. So I was sacrificing my own physical health in order to gain people's approval, to please people. And now I think back to it, I wish I could go back and shake myself and, say, what are you doing? What are you so afraid of? But I know damn well, I was afraid of conflict, getting in trouble at work, So afraid of having those awkward conversations. I was afraid of people thinking badly of me. And now I think back to it, I kind of think, but what was it benefiting me? And in hindsight, it wasn't benefiting me. I mean, I didn't get promoted in that particular job, even though I'd done all those things. Yeah, and there were other people around me who were, you know, just working normal hours, who were succeeding more so than me. But my anxiety was fueling these behaviours because I was afraid to lose my job. So this is where the unconditional acceptance comes in, you know, working on, you can accept yourself. You don't have to have, you know, a high-flying career. You can accept yourself no matter what you do. It's a preference to keep your job, but it's not a need. So I had to start working on these kinds of beliefs. So like surrounding being successful at work, but also, you know, the shame of if I was to be rejected by my colleagues for not being good enough. And this was where shame attacking came in very handy on my OCD recovery journey. I've done a video about shame attacking, talking through some of the ones that I did. So opening myself up to the feeling of judgment from others and doing shame attacks to make me come across as being a bit incompetent, have other people judge me as being incompetent. So that was really, really good for my kind of people-pleasing tendencies, and my fear of being disapproved of when it came to my professional life. As I started to get a bit better speaking up for myself at work and maybe saying no a bit more, I would sometimes be plagued by the idea of that maybe I'm being selfish when I'd see others around me volunteering to do things that I wasn't volunteering to do, and maybe they'd be working later and perhaps I would be getting up and walking out on time. And I struggled with that at first, but then I had to realise I'm not responsible for their behaviours. If they're comfortable doing that and it's, you know, well, they're the only ones who can look after themselves. If it's detrimental for their mental health, then they will learn that, but I'm no longer going to make bad choices for my own mental health. So again, it's kind of, I was having to accept myself for making those, you know, arguably selfish choices, to put my happiness and well-being ahead of the happiness and well-being perhaps of my colleagues. That you know, that's not to say that you can't aim to be a good team player and, you know, help out and delegate, and if you can, you know, if you see someone struggling, you can help, but not if it's detrimental to your mental health. And, you know, it's down to other people to speak up if they're struggling, as it would have been down to me back in the day when I was pushing myself too far and making myself feel worse than I already did. That was my own decisions and my own choices, and I take responsibility for that. That's not the company's fault, it's not colleagues' fault, that was mine. I have to own that, and now I can see where that led me and change my behaviours and beliefs based on it. And I choose to be selfish now because I don't think being selfish is a bad thing anymore. I still want to be a caring and compassionate friend, colleague, family member, but not if it's repeatedly to my detriment. You know, sometimes we'll go out of our way to help people to be compassionate, but we don't necessarily want to be doing these things out of a fear. So another example for me is that previously I would say yes to lots of things, and I would try too hard and I'd agonize over how to help like friends and family, and I wouldn't speak up for myself if I wasn't comfortable in a certain position, or if things were said that I wasn't necessarily happy with, you know, about me, for example, or my life. I wouldn't necessarily speak up for myself so much, again, because that fear of rejection, because I maybe didn't see myself as being worthy simply just for being a human being, and maybe I believed that I was only worthy if I was completely giving and unselfish. And really these behaviours came from fears because I was afraid of, you know, being alone in my life and losing everybody and people not, you know, not wanting to be in my life anymore. It wasn't necessarily driven from, you know, true wanting to do these things to help people out. It was driven out of fear. So obviously we want to get to the point where we're helping other people, when we're saying yes to things because we actually want to do it, not because we're afraid of what will happen if we don't do it. And I think it's important to make these changes as we work on our recovery journey, because we need to take the time to work on our recovery, and we need to be, you know, we also want to work on living our life as best we can so that OCD doesn't get in the way. And in order to do that, we need to learn to not need other people's approval, to not be afraid of people leave us, to not make decisions and behave in a certain way because of fear. You know, we want to choose the way we behave because it's what's best for us. So, you know, so this is where the difference again is the difference between, you know, we can still strive to be the best friend we can be, and or daughter or colleague or employee, but we want that to be because we want to be that because that's the sort of person we'd like to be. But we can accept ourselves if we don't always, if we sometimes fall short of that. And if we fall short of it because we simply don't want to do that particular thing on that day, we need to learn to accept ourselves for that, even if that makes us selfish. Even if our people in our lives maybe think we're a bit selfish sometimes. Well, we know our own journey and our own struggles. We learn over time what helps us and what doesn't help us. We know that better than others. So if they can't accept us and our choices, and if they don't want what's best for us, you know, then so be it. It's the same, you know, it's the same way. It's like, as I was saying, we don't want our behaviours to be driven by fear, and, you know, it's not necessarily doing it for the right reasons. Well, you know, if other people can't accept that we say no from time to time, we can't always fit in with their timings that suit them for their life because they have certain commitments. If we can't always slot into that and they can't accept us, then maybe that's okay to let that go. Because we don't want to be, you know, trying desperately all the time to compromise and slot into other people's lives or what they want us to be or what they want us to do, even if, you know, if it's constantly putting ourselves kind of second place. Sometimes we might choose to put ourselves second place. You know, if a good friend's having a really, really rough time, maybe you do sacrifice date night to be with your best friend a little bit, you know, because you want to make sure that they're maybe doing okay, but you don't want to be making that choice because you're afraid that they'll think you're a terrible friend if you don't do that. So it's kind of our motivations to do things really that we want to be keeping an eye on with kind of, you know, avoiding, we don't want to do things to avoid being selfish, basically. One of the really great shame attacks that I did to help with kind of these tendencies and to seek approval and people please and things for me. So I'm somebody who, I think I have quite irrational beliefs about being polite. I don't like it if I come across as rude, and I don't like it if people are rude to me. It makes me really angry, actually. And this is something I've tried to work on over time, is being able to accept other people if they're less than polite to me, sometimes if they're a bit abrupt, because that is really, really not helpful to me to be so sensitive with my working relationships. So some of my shame attacking was practicing not saying thank yous and pleases as often, which might sound so small to some people, but I found it really hard. It was like having to bite my tongue. And it's like you could apply this to, you know, when you're kind of getting the urge to sort of, you know, say something or do something to seek approval or to people please or whatever, you know, you might have to bite your tongue a little bit and be silent and feel the awkwardness of the moment and feel the tension in the air, you know, prove to yourself that you can stand somebody potentially judging you, you can stand potential conflict, and you can stand an awkward silence. So that's kind of, you know, shame attacking for me helped me kind of practice more of those things so that I could start kind of living my life more the way I wanted to do it, unconditionally accepting myself and not doing behaviours with other people in the relationships in my life that are driven by fear, more out of choice because that's what I want to do. So I hope this video has been useful. So it's a bit of a kind of talking through, like reframing selfishness as not being necessarily something negative, something we need to do sometimes. And I think to be able to accept ourselves as being selfish is useful, because some of the exposures that we need to do in order to push through our OCD, especially if we struggle with harm OCD or you know, sort of some kind of hyper responsibility or relationship OCD, some of the beliefs that we hold around being selfish might be fueling some of these, you know, stopping us being able to go through our lives, even though we're having these thoughts and feelings because we feel like we're being immoral. But actually we need to choose to push through and continue with what we're doing and do our exposures in order to recover from our OCD. So there's many benefits to being able to accept a degree of selfishness in yourself, particularly when it comes to your OCD recovery. So I hope this video has been useful to you if you are somebody who struggles with the idea of being selfish and gets anxiety over feeling disapproved of by other people or ashamed, or perhaps has people-pleasing tendencies that are really unhelpful and particularly unhelpful to your OCD recovery. But thank you very much for your time and watching, and take care everybody. Bye.